Tell me your full name
Julian Richard Campbell.
and your birthday.
February 15, 1920.
Okay.
That's a long time ago.
100 years. Congratulations on the centenarian status.
We had a party in February. My wife had 260 people there.
260.
Terry Pines Country Club, yeah.
Where'd you have your birthday party?
Coleman, Terry Pines Country Club.
Okay. So I'll try to start at the beginning with your World War II story. Where does that begin and where did it take you?
Well, I graduated from pilot training at an air base near Dothan, Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
From there, I went immediately to a bomber pilot training in an air base near Fort Myers, Florida. B-26. You ever hear of the B-26?
Yes, sir.
Martin B-26, the Widowmaker, and Flying Prostitute, they called it. A few other names. I flew 40 bombing missions in that airplane.
40?
But a little story that they mentioned before, when I got through with a training session with my crew, I had to go to Omaha, Nebraska for the B-26 plant to pick up a new B-26. My orders were to fly it to a base in North Africa,
Mm-hmm.
where I would start flying bombing missions. On the way, I had to go to Savannah, Georgia to have big fuel tanks placed in the bomb bay to cross the Atlantic.
Yeah.
On the way there, I made my flight plan to pass over Arley. I passed over Meek High School at about 300 miles an hour, 200 feet above the school building. Everybody ran out, including her. She was in the 10th grade at the time. Anyway, I flew on to North Africa, and from there I flew 40 bombing missions from North Africa, and finally on the island of Sardinia, in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, I was stationed flying bombing missions. We encountered flak. You want to hear about a bombing mission? Anti-aircraft artillery shot up from the ground. Big shells that timed to explode at the level we were flying.
Yeah, you were based where?
Pardon?
Where were you based?
I was based in North Africa to begin my flying missions, but on the island of Sardinia, on my final base of assignment, closer to, mid-Europe.
Yeah.
And
Hang on just a moment. I'm gonna try to turn this little light back on.
You can see if there's a light in here that we can turn on. It just looks better in the video. I turned it off.
Yeah.
There's a light switch over here, right there.
Yeah.
Maybe that's it. Yeah.
yeah.
That'll get him better in the picture for the video.
I don't know why that.
That's
cutting
okay. I didn't want to talk with them. Okay, y'all, when you get ready.
Sorry for the delay, but you were telling me that you flew 40 bombing missions in the B-26.
As a B-26 pilot, yeah.
Did you fly anything else besides?
Didn't have anything. Let me finish the 40 missions.
Yeah.
We encountered enemy fighters also. My airplane was hit on almost, I would say, half of the missions with flak, some degree of flak.
Mm-hmm.
We encountered German fighters on many of the missions. I was hit by those. Planes were shot down by both enemy fighters and, of course, the flak. Somehow, I always got back. Anyway, and I finished 40 missions, came home in December of 1943, through 1940, I flew missions. 43, and I came on when my first job was to train younger B-26 pilots. I mean, younger in experience for combat. But then after a few months of that, I was reassigned to the West Coast to fly heavy transports across the Pacific in the war against Japan. I made many flights during the last part of the war across that wide Pacific, carrying passengers or cargo or whatever, wounded back from the combat zones in the islands. I made many missions across against Japan. And when the war was over, September 2, I was staged on Okinawa with a large number of C-54s, airplane. We flew the 1st Airborne Division into Tokyo to start the occupation of Japan.
Wow.
And the war ended. I stayed in for a couple of years, kept flying across the Pacific. I got out in 1947, came home and renewed a relationship with that pretty young girl over there. She's the one that ran out of school. She was in the 10th grade, but now she was 20. Let's see, she's senior in high school.
Okay.
I had one date with her during the middle of World War II. And we were married April 3, 1942, and 72 years ago. I enrolled in Howard College and Semper University, and joined the National Guard, and we were recalled during the Korean War. I was recalled during the Korean War. Stayed in for another 20 years, had many assignments around the world, many jobs around the world other than flying, many flying jobs. I flew missions in Vietnam during the Vietnam War. So I served in 3 or 4 wars, however you want to count it.
Yeah.
World War II, Germany was one and Japan was the other. But I'm here today.
So just during World War I, you were in North Africa.
World War II.
I mean, World War II, excuse me. Not making you that old.
Yeah, nearly.
You were in North Africa, Europe,
Yeah,
and the Pacific Theater as well.
World War II.
Wow.
Both of them.
And then, what did you fly in Korea?
I didn't fly combat in Korea. I was in during the Korean War.
Okay.
But I flew transports missions in Vietnam during the Vietnam War.
Okay.
I had a ground job, but I also had to fly transport missions also.
Gotcha.
It's a long war, long story.
Yes, indeed. Let me ask you about, I'll start with this. Tell me the story you were telling me earlier about the book. How did that book come about?
Well, when I came home from Vietnam, I guess an hour after I got home, Robin came 9 months later. She was born when I was 47, and I mentioned when my wife was 40, and she's the one that said, Dad, I don't know anything about you before you were 50 years old. That's when I had retired really from the service. She wanted me to do an oral, saw something, and I said, no, I can't do that. I can write you a little notes about it, and it ended up with this.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic that you did that.
It's all about the war, about my early life from the time I was born through the age of 49 or 50.
Where were you born?
Trade, Alabama, Coleman County.
Okay.
But I grew up from age 5 just down the road here
Okay.
on a farm. My dad was a Baptist preacher and farmer, and my mother was about twice as religious as my dad. And she was a spiritual leader in our family. And a little story on one mission, I was arrived back to the base and I'd received one of my frequent letters from my mother. She wrote me off and always assured me that she and Dad were praying for me constantly, my safety. When I opened the letter, there's a Bible chapter in there.
Mm-hmm.
When after reading her letter, I unfolded the Bible the page, and the 91st Psalm was outlined on the page, and she had written words like, "Read this, it'll give you courage when facing danger." And I read through that chapter 2 or 3 or more times, and went back and read selected verses. Verse 1 was, "He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide in the shadow of the Almighty." Verse 5, "You shall not be afraid of the terror by night, nor the arrow that flies by day." Verse 7, "1,000 may fall at your side, and 10,000 at your right hand, but it shall not come near you." The United States lost 20,000 airplanes in European theater during World War II. And the last verse was, verse 11 was, "For he has given his angels charge over you to keep you in all your ways." And the last verse is very timely. "With long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation."
Mm-hmm.
That's a little story, passed by.
A great story, yeah. While you were kind of on that topic, and since you were 100 years old, what bit of advice would you have for young people today, just to have a great long life?
To have a long life. Someone asked me some time ago about to what do you attribute to your long life? I said, I don't yet know. There are 2 cereal companies negotiating with me. Anyway, exercise. When I got out of service, I moved to Coleman. Terry Pine, are you a golfer?
No.
Well, anyway, Terry Pine Golf Course was open in 1970.
Okay.
I started playing, that's 40 years ago. I played the course more than 5,000 times, and I walked.
Wow.
I attribute that to my longevity.
When's the last time you played?
2 weeks ago when I fell and put a knot on the side of my head.
Had his head on both sides.
Oh.
I ride now. 2 years ago, I had fallen on the course 2 or 3 times, steep hills, and I started riding. Now I only play 9 holes now.
Well, that's amazing.
And a pretty wife will help you to live a long time.
Yeah.
My wife, she's 93. She's real honest about her age, but she tells people that she's 7 years younger than me, and she lies about my age.
That's not true, don't believe it.
That's a good story. Okay, I'm gonna ask you about, I'll take that. Well, you told me about that. Explain the difference in the set of wings.
When you graduate, the bottom one, that's the wings that were pinned on me when I graduated from pilot training. After 7.5 years and more than 1,500 of flying, I had the hours wrong. 7.5 years and 1,500 flying hours, you would become a senior pilot. That's the 1 star.
Okay.
With 15 years and 3,000 flying hours or more, you become command pilot.
Okay. Very good, very good.
Mhm.
I like those. Looks beautiful in that case. Okay, on this beautiful shadow box,
I retired as a lieutenant colonel.
1969, Lieutenant Colonel Julian Campbell. The grateful nation thanks you for 28 years of outstanding and dedicated service to the United States Air Force. That looks very good. Thank you for your service,
Appreciate it.
a long service, yeah. Just the part about 40 missions is amazing,
Mm.
but then you went on.
Let me tell you something he didn't tell you about one of those missions.
Please do.
He was hit pretty bad once.
What's she say?
They flew in close formation when they were, I never understood that, but they did, they flew in close formation. When somebody got hit and they thought they might have lost control of the plane, the other planes moved out
Right,
to give them room to fall in case they couldn't control
Right.
the plane. And they did that for him. But he checked both his engines, they were both still good and running. He stayed right with the back and brought the plane in, and then he had to get a new plane to fly. Because that one had been destroyed, but nobody had been hurt on the plane.
that's amazing.
I can't hear what she said, but I guess it's correct.
She was telling about the time you were hit by flak
Yeah.
pretty badly and thought you might have to drop out of formation, but
I was blasted out of formation, really.
oh, you hit,
The
it
big
was hit
shell
that hard.
exploded just beneath my aircraft. I had a plane flying on each of my wings, and they saw it, and they told me later, they said that thought I was shot down. That they moved away quickly to get me room to fall, but I didn't. Pushed the throttles forward, and both engines responded beautifully. I completed the bombing mission.
How bad was the damage?
We had a number of holes in the lower fuselage and other locations,
Okay,
but we could find no place where an operational part of the plane was damaged, and no crew member was injured. Crew members were injured many times on flights that came home, you know, even killed in the planes that came home, but nobody was hurt. And then all the missions that we flew, no crew member in my plane was ever hit by shrapnel.
oh good.
We were unlucky, we didn't get a Purple Heart because of that.
What did it feel like when the flak was hitting so close?
Feel like you wanted to go home. In one of my talks, I said, do you think I was afraid flying those missions? They think I'm gonna be a big brave boy. I said, well, I'll tell you a story. Eddie Rickenbacker, a World War I famous pilot,
Mm-hmm.
said you only show courage when you do something when you're afraid. I said, I showed courage on 40 bombing missions. That's a fact, really. I was afraid. Everybody, if they're honest, they'll just tell you they're afraid. Unless they're little nuts or something.
The fact that so many of the men who I've met, like you, have pretty much said they just did what they were taught to do. You know, they say, I'm not a hero, but I just did what I was supposed to do. Is that kind of the same for you?
Yeah, I don't feel like I'm a hero now. I did what I was called upon to do. Made it through. My mom and dad were good people. They did a lot of praying. I believe in that.
Yeah, me too. So you credit your parents a lot for making it home.
Well, I'll tell you a story about my family. There were 6 boys in my family, and each one of us had 6 sisters. Factor that out. 6 boys and 6 girls.
Yeah.
That was a large family.
That is a big family.
They're all dead. There are 3 of us still living. a sister younger than two. My younger brother just died a month ago.
Oh,
They're still awaiting for his to have a memorial service for him now because of the virus, you know.
do you have any other stories to tell from World War II?
Well, I made many flights across the Pacific, and back then, the flight from the West Coast to Hawaii was
What kind of plane did you fly then?
C-54, 4-engine transport.
Okay.
C-54. The time from the West Coast to Hawaii was 10 to 12 hours, depending on the wind conditions.
Mm-hmm.
So the total time across the Pacific would be 30 hours more with stops along the way.
Yeah.
And I made many flights across many points in the Pacific. Those were good experience flying time, but I had never had an incident. In fact, the story is told that the C-54 made 77,000 crossings of the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean total during and for a short period after World War II, with the loss of one airplane. That wasn't dangerous, was it? But then the missions in Vietnam, they were dangerous. I watched mortars fly by or missiles fly by my plane at night, flying over Vietnam. They didn't have a big anti-aircraft artillery, but when you're calling in for a landing, they'd shoot at us with a small arms fire, really, and other things. That was an unpleasant war, really.
That had to be pretty scary too. Because it's not really fast enough to.
Pardon?
Because your plane's not very fast enough to evade anything.
The old Goonie bird, I mainly flew the C-47. It's Goonie bird in there. It was used as a gunship also, firing guns back out of the side of the airplane at night against the Viet Cong, I should say. Yeah.
What altitude were you usually flying then?
In low altitude. If I was going some distance, it'd be probably 5,000 feet, but you know, you're coming in and taking off, you're right over the ground for a good ways, just slightly above. And the Viet Cong was in the jungle everywhere we went, really.
Okay.
But I got through that one, came home and spent 3 years in Hawaii, Simon, Pacific Air Force headquarters. That was my last assignment. Job as a staff officer there.
Okay.